Hey everyone! Today I'm going to be showing you how to crochet Caleb the crab. An expert in seaside real estate, this crab always picks the prime spots for sunbathing and shell picking. So Caleb can be made in sport, DK, or plush yarn by adjusting your hook size. Today I'm going to be crocheting with worsted weight yarn and a 4mm crochet hook. And this little guy here that I'm holding is made with DK yarn and a 2mm crochet hook. If you haven't already, be sure to snag the matching greeting card to make an adorable and one-of-a-kind gift that your friends and family will love. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. And we're going to begin with the head and body and with this orange colored yarn. So the first thing we need to do is tie a slip knot and chain. So let's review how to form a slip knot and how to make our first chain stitch. Alright, so let's review how to tie a slip knot and how to form a chain stitch. So we're going to take our yarn, and I'm using white for this demonstration, so just double check you're using the correct color from your pattern. And we're going to reserve ourselves a little bit of a tail, just like we do with our magic ring. So I'm going to take maybe 5 or 6 inches or so of my working yarn here, make myself a little tail. And then we're going to take that tail and we're going to wrap it behind our working yarn. So we're sort of making like a lowercase letter B. So once we've got that wrapped around, we formed this loop here. We're going to kind of sandwich the working yarn with the tail. So bring it back around and kind of cross it over that loop. Sort of like a pretzel twist. Then when we've done that, what we need to do is draw this twist that we've just done, that strand, through this loop without pulling the tail all the way through, because that would just tie a knot. So I take my hook hand, which is my right hand, and I grab what I've laid over that loop and pull it. And then with my other hand, I grab my working yarn and then pull the loop through. And the reason I form my slip knots this way is because they tighten when you pull on the tail, but not when you pull on the working yarn. It won't tighten while you're trying to add stitches to it. So once you've got that slip knot formed, you're going to take your hook and slip it inside of the slip knot, and then pull the tail to tighten it into a loop down onto your hook. Then you're ready to begin tensioning by laying the working yarn over your yarn index finger. So for me, that's my left index finger. And then wrapping the rest of your fingers around our working yarn. And then I like to hold on to the slip knot itself with my middle and thumb on my yarn hand. And then we're ready to form a chain. So to chain, we'll take our hook and we're going to yarn over, meaning we're going to put the yarn over our hook, and then draw the working yarn through the slip knot we tied, and then pull up to form a nice tall loop. So that's our first chain. To continue chaining, we're going to just keep yarning over and drawing a nice tall loop through each time. One final thing though, the loop on your hook, as I'm sure I may have mentioned in the video before, that doesn't count as a stitch. This is sort of like a stitch in progress. So right now I have 2 chain stitches formed. I'll yarn over and draw another stitch through. That'll be 3, 4. And as you add chain stitches, I tend to move my middle and my thumb up closer to my hook to help me sort of tension my yarn a little easier. So as I chain, I just keep shifting my hand down the stitches that I've just created. Alright, so that's how you tie a slip knot and chain. Alright, so now that we have our first slip knot tied, we're going to go ahead and begin here on round 1. So if you look at the top left hand corner, you're going to see the pattern instructions. Those are going to track with us as we work here in the video tutorial. So you can check the top left for ease of access on the pattern. So we're going to begin by chaining 9 stitches here. And then in the second chain from our hook, so we don't count the loop here on our hook, but in that 1, 2 second chain, we're going to place our first single crochet stitch. So we'll take our hook and we're going to go through that second chain, push our hook straight through from front to back. Then we'll yarn under, so we're going to put the yarn under our hook, and then use the hook to draw up a tall loop, and then yarn over, so put the yarn over our hook, and draw through those 2 loops left on our hook to form our first single crochet stitch. Then we're also going to want to mark this stitch since it's the first stitch of our round. Alright, so that's the first single crochet stitch. We need to add 6 more for 7 single crochet stitches total. So we'll go through our next chain, and you can tell the next chain is the chain our first chain's kind of coming out of here. You can see this one here. We'll push through that chain and yarn under, and draw up a nice tall loop, and then yarn over and draw through both. And that forms our second single crochet stitch. And we'll keep adding single crochet stitches until we have 7 total, 1 in each of the chains that we've already formed. So here's my last single crochet stitch, and in our last chain, which is technically the slip knot that we tied to start, we're going to place 3 single crochet stitches. That's going to help us flip around so that we can work down the other side of this chain. So I'm going to start by putting my first single crochet stitch here on the right hand side of that slip knot. Then I'll place my second single crochet stitch in that same place. And then I'm going to swing my chain around so that I can be working up the other side, and then place that last single crochet stitch on this side of the chain. So I'm going to go, it's the same space we've been putting them in, but I'm going to be working with my chain facing the right way. So you can see those 3 single crochet stitches kind of help us flip around the other side of this chain. And then I'm going to work this tail in as I work up the other side of my chain by just laying it behind all of these chain stitches and working over it for the next couple of stitches. So working down the other side of the chain, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 6 chains. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, almost all the way to the end. So I'm going to go into that first chain stitch here on the other side, and I'm going to lay that slip knot tail over my crochet hook as well. Then yarn under and draw through, then yarn over and draw through both loops. So there's my first single crochet on this side of the chain. I'll just keep working up this side of the chain. Alright, that's my last single crochet stitch, and in the last chain on this side, I'm going to place an increase. So just like when we put 3 single crochet stitches in the same place, an increase is when we're going to be putting 2 single crochet stitches in the same place. So we're going to go through this next chain, yarn under, draw up a nice tall loop, then yarn over and draw through both. And then we're going to put a second single crochet stitch in that same space. And then if you look at the end of our instructions, we have the number 18. that's telling us that we should have 18 stitches total at the end of this round. And if you want to double check how many stitches you have, we can count these little V shapes. So starting with our stitch marker, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So I have all 18 stitches for round 1, and I'm ready to move on to round 2. So round 2, we're going to begin by placing an increase in the first stitch from round 1, which our marker is in. So we'll take our stitch marker out, and we're going to increase in this stitch. So just like we just did, we're going to put 2 single crochet stitches in the same stitch from the last round. So working in a stitch is a lot like working in the chain. We're going to take our hook and we're going to go under both sides of this V of our stitch. So we'll slip straight through, and then from here it's just like the single crochet stitches we've been making. Yarn under and draw up a loop, then yarn over and draw through both. And before we finish our increase, let's mark this stitch since it's the first stitch of the round. Then we're going to go ahead and put an increase. Then we're going to go ahead and put our second single crochet stitch of our increase in the same space. So go through that same stitch. You can see there's a little gap here where I'm going to push my hook back through. Yarn under and draw up a loop. Yarn over, draw through both. So there's that first increase. Then we're going to place 1 single crochet stitch in the next 6 stitches of this round. Alright, so there are my 6 single crochet stitches, and I'm ready to place my next 3 stitches, which are increases. So when we made the 3 single crochet in the same place to help us swing around the other side, we're going to be increasing in each of those 3 single crochet. So just like we did at the beginning of the round, we're going to put 2 single crochet stitches in our next stitch. So we'll go through from front to back, yarn under, draw up a loop, then yarn over and draw through both, and then make our second single crochet stitch in that same place. So there's the first increase. We'll make our second increase in the next stitch, and our last increase. Alright, so there are those 3 increases done for me. Then we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 6 stitches. Alright, there are those 6 single crochet stitches, and in the last 2 stitches of the round, we're going to just put 1 increase in each. So there's my first increase. And my last stitch of the round. Alright, so that's round 2 done. We're ready to move on to round 3. And we'll start by taking our stitch marker out and placing 1 single crochet stitch where that marker just was. And then remarking that stitch. And we're always going to mark the first stitch of our round because that helps us keep track of where we are in our round. Alright, so after that first single crochet stitch, we're going to place an increase in the next stitch of the round. So there's the increase. Then we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 6 stitches of the round. Alright, there are those 6 single crochet stitches. Then we've got this parentheses pattern here in our instructions. So if you look inside of that parentheses, you'll see the instruction 1 SC, comma, 1 INC, and then just outside there's a multiplication sign and then the number 3. So to translate that, that means we're going to do everything in the parentheses in the order it appears. 1 single crochet, 1 increase, and then we're going to repeat that 3 times total. 1 single crochet, increase, 1 single crochet, increase. So let's go ahead and repeat that pattern the first time. So in our first stitch, we'll put 1 single crochet. In the next stitch, we're going to increase, so 2 single crochet stitches in the same place. And that's 1 repetition of that parentheses. We need to do that 2 more times for a total of 3. So 1 single crochet, increase. There's 2 times, and 1 last time, 1 single crochet, increase. Alright, that takes us all the way around the other side where we need to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 6 stitches. Alright, there are my 6 single crochet stitches. And then we've got another parentheses pattern. It's the same pattern, but this time we're only going to repeat it twice. So 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch, increase, and then repeat that 1 last time to wrap up this round. Alright, so that wraps up round 3. We're ready for round 4, and we'll begin by taking our stitch marker out and placing 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. I'm going to go ahead and mark that first stitch. And then place 1 single crochet in the next stitch of the round. Then in the third stitch of the round, I'm going to increase. And then in the next 6 stitches, I'm going to just put 1 single crochet stitch. Alright, there are those 6 single crochet stitches. Then we've got another parentheses pattern to repeat. So we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches. And then an increase. And then we need to repeat that repetition 2 more times for a total of 3, which should flip us around the other side of our oval here. Alright, that's all 3 repetitions of that pattern for me. Then I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 6 stitches of the round. And then to end this round, we've got that parentheses pattern that we're going to repeat twice. So 1 single crochet in the next 2 stitches, and then an increase. And then repeat that a final time. And that wraps up round 4. Alright, so we're ready for round 5, and we're going to begin by taking our marker out and placing 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. So there are those 3 single crochet stitches. Then I'm going to increase. And then put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 6 stitches of my round. Alright, there are those 6 single crochet stitches. Then, to go around the side of the corner here, we're going to repeat that parentheses pattern of 3 single crochet increase, 3 times total. So 1 single crochet, 2 single crochet, 3 single crochet, increase. And then repeat that 2 more times. Alright, that's all 3 repeats of that parentheses pattern for me. So we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 6 stitches of the round. There are my 6 single crochet stitches, and then to end this round we're going to do that parentheses pattern 2 more times. So 1 single crochet, 2 single crochet, 3, and then an increase. And then 1 more repetition. So 1, 2, 3, increase. And that wraps up round 5. Alright, so for round 6, we're going to begin by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then an increase in the next stitch. And then 1 single crochet stitch in the next 14 stitches of the round. Alright, so there are my 14 single crochet stitches. Then we're going to put 1 increase in the next stitch. And then 1 single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches. And then 1 increase in the next stitch. That kind of swings us around the side of the oval here. Then we'll put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 14 stitches on this side. Alright, there are my 14 single crochet stitches. Then we're going to place one increase in the next stitch. And then end this round by putting one single crochet stitch in the remaining 4 stitches of the round. And that wraps up round 6. For round 7, we're going to begin by putting one single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. Then we'll increase in the next stitch. And then put one single crochet stitch in the next 14 stitches of the round. Alright, there are those 14 single crochet stitches. Then we're going to place an increase in the next stitch. And then put one single crochet stitch in the next 7 stitches. Then follow that with an increase, which kind of swings us around this side. And then we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 14 stitches. Alright, there are those 14 single crochet stitches for me. Then we're going to place one increase. And then in the last 5 stitches of the round, we'll just put one single crochet. And that wraps up round 7. Okay, we're ready for round 8, and we'll begin by putting one single crochet stitch in the first 3 stitches of the round. So there are those first 3 single crochet stitches. Then I'm going to increase. And then just like the last 2 rounds, I'm going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 14 stitches. Alright, so there are those 14 single crochet stitches. Then I'm going to put an increase in the next stitch. And then one single crochet stitch in the next 9 stitches of the round. There are those 9 single crochet stitches. Then I'm going to increase the next stitch. After that, I'll put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 14 stitches. Alright, there are those 14 single crochet stitches on this side. I'll follow that with an increase. And then in the remaining 6 stitches of this round, I'll put 1 single crochet stitch. And that wraps up round 8. Alright, so for rounds 9 through 17, all we'll need to do is put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch of the round. So that's just 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch of the round. And don't forget to move your stitch marker up as you start a new round. So I will see you back here whenever I have wrapped that last round of single crochet and we're ready to move on in our pattern. Alright, so I have just finished round 17. You can see my piece is quite a bit bigger since we last saw each other. So before we continue on, I wanted to point out there's a chance your piece has been working inside out. So an easy way to tell is that that tail from our slipknot start is on the inside of what we're doing. And then also the stitches on the right side have this tidy X pattern to them. Whereas if it's on the wrong side, they have these little lines that run through and they're not as tidy looking. So if your piece is worked inside out with that tail on the outside and your stitches kind of look like this, now is a good time to flip your piece right side out so that the right side's facing on the outside of Caleb's body. Alright, so we have a color change here before we move on to round 18. Alright, so to do this color change, we're going to take our hook and we're going to pull this last orange loop really long. Then take our hook out of that loop and slide it through the 2 loops here of the stitch. So I've kind of just slid my hook through both of those loops. And to do our color change, we're going to take our new color, this sort of beige, and we're going to pull that beige color through those 2 loops there. Then we'll take that orange and we're going to pull until that loop we've made comes undone, which switches our colors. And then we can cut the orange yarn now because we're not going to be using it anymore. So I'm going to cut a small tail, maybe 4 inches or so. And then I'm going to pull that beige yarn so the beige tail isn't quite as long. I don't want this tail to be super long. And then as we continue working, we're going to have these 2 tails, the orange one that we just cut and the beige one from fastening on the inside of our work. And we'll be working them in for the first few stitches of round 18. Alright, so there's a color change done. We're ready to start in on round 18, and we're going to be working in the back loops only. So let me take my stitch marker out so I can show you what that means. So far we've been working through both of our loops of our stitches. So each loop has a front and a back loop, that V shape here. For this round, we're going to only be working in this back loop here. So I kind of push my hook through the center of the stitch and grab just that back loop. So for the entire round 18, we're only going to be working in the back loop. Alright, so we've got a parentheses pattern and there's something new that we've not done inside, but let's start with what we know, which is to put 1 single crochet stitch in the back loops only of the next 7 stitches. So we'll take our hook, go through that back loop, then take those 2 tails from our color change and also lay them over our hook. Then yarn under and draw through both the back loop and then around those tails. Then yarn over and draw through both loops. and then mark that stitch. Then we're going to go through the next back loop, lay those tails over our hook as well, and yarn under, draw up a loop, then yarn over and draw through both. Now let's work those tails in for one more stitch. So back loop, lay the tails, yarn under, draw through, and then finish our single crochet stitch. And then we're going to lay those tails inside of our work here. We don't have to work them in anymore. They're locked in place with those 3 stitches that we've made. So let's continue making those 7 single crochet stitches. So we've got 3. So here's my 4th in the back loop. 5, 6, and 7. And then in the next 2 back loops, we're going to make a decrease. So to decrease, we're going to take 2 stitches and work them into 1 stitch for this round. To do that, in the back loops, we're going to go through the next stitch's back loop, yarn under and draw up a loop, and then do that exact same thing in the next back loop. So we'll go through the back loop, yarn under and draw up a loop, and then yarn over and draw through all 3 loops left on your hook. And that decreases 2 stitches from the previous round into 1 stitch for this round. So we're going to repeat that sequence of 7 single crochet stitches in the back loop, followed by a back loop only decrease, another 5 times for a total of 6 repetitions all the way around this round. Alright, and that wraps up round 18. Alright, so if we're ready for round 19, and we're back working in the front and back loops of our stitches, so no more back loop only. We've got another parentheses pattern to repeat, and this time we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 6 stitches of the round. So there are those 6 single crochet stitches. I'm going to follow that with a decrease, which is just like the back loop only decrease we did last round, but this time just in both sides of our stitch. So go through and draw up a loop in both sides, and do the same thing in the stitch after, and then draw through all 3. And that is 1 repetition. Let's do that same parentheses pattern 5 more times for a total of 6 all the way around this round. Alright, that wraps up round 19. Alright, so we're ready for round 20, and we've got another parentheses pattern to repeat of 1 single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches of the round. Followed by a decrease. And then just like before, we're going to repeat that repetition pattern 5 more times for a total of 6 repetitions all the way around. Alright, and that wraps up round 20. Alright, we're ready for round 21, and we'll start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches of the round. So there's those first 4 single crochet, then I'm going to decrease. And then repeat that sequence 5 more times for a total of 6 all the way around. Alright, that wraps up round 21. Alright, so for round 22 we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. And then decrease. And then repeat that pattern another 5 times for a total of 6 all the way around. And that wraps up round 22 for me. Round 23 we're going to start by putting one single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. And then decreasing. And then just like the last couple of rounds, they're going to repeat that repetition pattern 5 more times for a total of 6 repetitions all the way around this round. Alright, that wraps up round 23 for me, and I'm ready for round 24, which is the last round of the body. I'm going to start by putting one single crochet stitch in the next stitch of the round. And then decreasing in the stitch after. Then I'm going to repeat that sequence another 5 times for a total of 6 repetitions all the way around. Alright, so that was my last decrease, so we're ready to fasten off and stuff the body. So we're going to fasten off first by taking our stitch marker out and then slip stitching to that same stitch the marker was just in. So to do a slip stitch, we'll go through that same stitch, yarn under, and draw up a loop. And then we're going to just draw that loop we made through the only other loop on our hook. And that's called a slip stitch when we do that. Then we need to cut a tail to sew with because we're going to use it to close up the bottom of the body after we stuff. So go ahead and reserve maybe 12 inches or so. I always like to have a little extra just in case. You can cut that working yarn. And then we're going to take the slip stitch on our hook still, and we're going to draw it and keep pulling until the tail we just cut goes all the way through that slip stitch. And then we'll take that tail and pull to tighten that slip stitch down. Alright, so next up we need to stuff the body. So we're going to grab some stuffing and just push it through this opening here at the bottom of the body. And then I like to stretch the stuffing so that it goes to either end of this sort of oval shape. So I'm going to push the stuffing kind of into those sides of Caleb's body to help kind of keep that sort of flat shape that he has. And then I'm not going to put too much stuffing in because I don't want the bottom of the body to sort of extend away. I want it to sort of sit flat along those loops that we left behind when we crocheted only in the back loops. So I'm going to just a pinch more here in the very bottom. Alright, so he's stuffed. Let's go ahead and sew closed this last round here. And to do that, we're going to take the tail that we cut from Caleb's body here in that beige color and thread it through the eye of our tapestry needle. And then we're going to sew through, going clockwise, each of the front loops left behind on the last round that we crocheted. So we've worked in the back loop, that's the one closest to the inside of our piece. We're only going to be working through the front loop this time. So I'm going to take my tapestry needle and from the bottom of the front loop, sew up through, and then rotate, sew through that next stitch. And I'm going to keep repeating that, rotating, sewing, until I've sewed through all 12 of those stitches left over from the last round of the body. Alright, so I have sewn through all 12 of those front loops, and to close off this round, I'm going to pull the tail, which cinches that entire round closed. Then to secure that cinch that we've just made, we need to tie a surface knot. So to do that, I like to loop my yarn over the surface of my work, and then I'm going to sew into a little of the fabric of the work itself, and then up through that loop I just formed. And then by pulling my tail, it's going to make that loop tie a knot around the tail, which secures that cinch that we've made. And then we'll weave this tail in by sewing it into the fabric of the body and then just out through any place, which is going to both pull the knot we just tied to the inside and also hide a length of the tail inside the body. So then we can unthread our tapestry needle, and by pulling that tail we just sewed through tightly and cutting it close to the surface of the work, it'll hide the tail inside the body, and we can discard any extra we didn't need. Alright, that is the body done. Let's move on to the next part of the pattern. Alright, so next up in our pattern, we're going to be working on the eye, starting with the inner eye, which is this white color yarn, and we need to form a magic ring. So let's review how to get a magic ring started, and then how to make our first single crochet stitch. Alright, so let's review how to form a magic ring. So we're going to start by taking a little length of our yarn, and I'm using white for this demonstration. Make sure you're using the correct color for the pattern that you are following along with. So I'm going to take this white, and I'm going to reserve myself a little bit of a tail. So I'm going to take the end of that yarn, and I'm going to stretch it so I've got about 5 inches or so of a tail. And the tail is going to be the end that is not attached to our ball of yarn. So once we've got about 5 inches or so reserved of that tail, we're going to take our yarn hand. For me, that's my left hand, but if you're a left-handed crocheter, this might be your right hand. But we're going to take our yarn hand and make a bit of a finger guns here. So my index and my middle finger, I'm going to put them together, and I'm going to be looking at the inside of them. Then I'm going to take that tail that I've reserved, that 5 inches, and I'm going to lay it so that it's over the lower digit on my index and my middle. And then I'll take my thumb and I'm going to press the yarn to those 2 fingers. Then I'm going to take my hook hand, which is for me my right hand, but could be your left hand, and I'm going to grab the working yarn. Once I've got that grabbed, I'll take it and I'm going to wrap it around the back side of my index and my middle finger so that it's sort of close to that top digit. I'll flip my hand over so you can see. So I want it to be close to my top digit, so you can see it's closer to the two tops of my fingers here. So we're going to wrap that around, and then once we've got it around the top digit of those two fingers, we're going to bring it so that it goes behind our thumb again. So I use my thumb and I pinch that second wrap in place. Then we're going to keep wrapping, this time going around the lower digit on our two fingers. So I'll flip my hand over so you can see these two wraps here. This is that one I just made, going around that lower digit. So we'll wrap around that lower digit, and then we're going to take our working yarn and one more time snug it behind our thumb, and then just pull it out of our way. So once we've done that, we should have two wraps and this sort of X shape on the insides of our hands. So once we have all of the yarn wrapped around our yarn hand here, we're ready to take our crochet hook in our hook hand, and we're going to flip our yarn hand over so that we're looking at the back side of our fingers. So we should have two wraps, one around the top digit, one around the lower digit on our yarn hand. We're going to take our hook and slip it underneath that top wrap, and then use the hook part to snag that lower wrap and bring it underneath the top wrap. Then we're going to take both of our hands and we're going to flip them over so that we're looking at the inside and away from our body. So I'm flipping out and away from my body. And then I'm going to bring my two hands together, so my yarn hand and my hook hand. I'm going to bring them so the index finger here on my hook hand can touch the back side of my yarn hand. Then using the thumb and index finger of my hook hand, I'm going to grab both the wrap on my hook and the wrap still on my fingers right where they meet. So I'm going to kind of snag the two of them together right there. Once I've got those pinched between my thumb and index finger on my hook hand, I can let go with my thumb and then gently slide those wraps off of my index and middle finger. So now that I've done that, let's locate both the tail, that's the end that's no longer attached to our ball of yarn, so it's got this blunt cut end on it. We're going to kind of pull that over into the 12 o'clock position, so kind of up and away. And then let's locate the working yarn. That's the stuff still attached to our ball of yarn. So once we've got those two identified, we're going to take the working yarn and begin tensioning it. So to do that, we'll take our index finger on our yarn hand. That for me is my left hand. Could be your right hand for you if you're a left-handed crocheter. And we're going to slip the working yarn over the top of our index finger. Then we'll take our middle, ring, and pinky finger on our yarn hand, and we're going to wrap those around that working yarn. Once you've done that, we also need to sandwich this working yarn in between our magic ring and our tail. So to do that, I like to take my middle finger and thumb on my yarn hand, and I'm going to grab that tail with my middle finger here. And then with my thumb, I want to grab the ring. So we don't want to grab our working yarn, which is kind of going in through that ring. We want to just get the bottom end of the ring here. And once you've got those two, we're going to kind of pinch them together. And you can see that sandwiches our working yarn in between the two of them. Once we've got those grabbed with our yarn hand, we can let go with our index and thumb on our hook hand. And the ring here that's on our hook is really loose. We'll tighten that by pulling our index finger up and away. You can see how that tightens that yarn. And then once we've done that, we're ready to yarn over and draw through the loop on our hook. So we'll take our hook, put the yarn over our hook, so I kind of just swing around the back side there and grab it. And we're going to pull that working yarn directly through the loop on our hook. Once we've done that, you can let go. It's not going to come undone. It won't come untied, which is very comforting because we've spent all this time creating it. The last thing we need to do before we're ready to begin is we're going to take the tail, and you can see it's threaded through our magic ring. We're going to take that tail and we're going to pull it out from the center of that ring. And from here, we're ready to begin working in the magic ring. We also need to work over the tail as well. So we'll take that ring and we'll take the tail and we're going to set them together so that we are working over both of these strands, the ring and the tail. All right, you are ready to go ahead and continue on in your pattern. All right, so now that we have our magic ring formed, we're ready to start in on round 1, where we're going to put 6 single crochet stitches inside of the magic ring. So remember, when we're working the magic ring, we need to work in both the ring and over the tail we use to tie the ring for this first round. So to make our first single crochet stitch, we'll take our hook and we're going to put it underneath the tail and the ring of the magic ring. Then yarn under and draw up a tall loop through the ring itself. Then yarn over and draw through both loops left on our hook. And then mark that stitch because it's our first single crochet. So there's the first single crochet stitch in our magic ring. We're going to continue adding stitches in that same way, so going through the ring and under the tail, yarning under and drawing up a loop, then yarning over and drawing through both. You can see there's my second. Here's my third single crochet stitch. 4, 5, and 6. Once you've got all 6 single crochet stitches inside of your magic ring, we'll take the tail that we've been working over, and by holding onto our stitches and pulling that tail tightly, that'll cinch our round closed so we can continue working in the round. So that's round 1 done. For round 2, we're going to be increasing in each stitch we made in round 1. So we're going to take our stitch marker out and increase in that stitch it was just in. Again, remember, increase is when we put 2 single crochet stitches in the same stitch from the previous round. So there's that first one, I've marked it. I'm going to add a second single crochet stitch in that same place. And I'll just keep increasing in each of the 6 stitches from round 1, giving me 12 stitches total for round 2. Alright, that wraps up round 2 for me. Before I move on to round 3 though, I'm going to give my magic ring tail one final tug. And then I'm going to trim it short, but not all the way off. So I'll leave probably about 1/2 inch here on the back of my work and discard this extra tail. That keeps it out of my way as I continue working around. Alright, so we're ready for round 3, where we've got a parentheses pattern to repeat. So we'll start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. And then increase in the next stitch. Then we'll repeat that 2 more times for a total of 3 repetitions. Alright, and that wraps up round 3 for me. Alright, so for round 4, we're going to just put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. Alright, that wraps up round 4 for me. Before we move on to round 5, let's go ahead and place our safety eye. So I'm going to take this loop on my hook and pull it up long, and then take my hook out so I can get to the center of it a little easier. So if you're going to be giving Caleb the crab to a young child or to a pet as a toy, you may want to embroider the eye on instead. But if not, we're going to go ahead and take one of our safety eyes here, and we're going to push it into the center of the magic ring round we used to start the eye. So I'm going to take the safety eye and push it directly into the center of that magic ring that I used to start the inner eye here. And then once you've got it slipped through the center of that magic ring, you can snap the little plastic back on the back side, which locks the safety eye in place. Alright, so we are ready for round 5, so I'm going to take my hook and reinsert, tighten down that loop I drew up long. And then for round 5, we've got another parentheses pattern to repeat, where we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. And then follow that with a decrease. And then repeat that another 2 times for a total of 3 repetitions. Alright, and that wraps up round 5. Alright, so round 6 is the last round of the inner eye, and we're going to start by putting decreases in each stitch. So here's my first decrease. And my second. And my third. But before I do my last 3 decreases, I'm going to add some stuffing to the inside of the eye. Alright, now the inner eye is stuffed for me. I'm going to finish by decreasing in the last 6 stitches, so 3 decreases. Alright, there's my last decrease. I'm ready to fasten off. And I'll do that by slip stitching to that first decrease I made. And then we're going to cut a medium length tail. We don't need very much, maybe 4 inches or so. And then just like with the body, we're going to pull that last slip stitch until our tail goes through, and then tighten down. And then I'm going to just tuck the tail that I cut to the inside of the eye, because there's going to be an orange sort of outer eye that goes around the back here. Alright, that's one inner eye done. Let's move on to the outer eye next. Alright, so next up in our pattern, we're going to be working on the outer eye. So we're going to be working with this orange color here, the same that we used on the body. And we'll begin by forming another magic ring. Alright, so now that I have my magic ring formed, I'm ready to start round 1, where I'm going to put 8 single crochet stitches inside of the magic ring. Don't forget to mark your first stitch. Alright, once you've got all 8 single crochet stitches added to your magic ring, you can pull the tail, which closes off round 1 and sets us up for round 2. Alright, so for round 2 we're going to be increasing in each stitch from round 1. So again, that's just to put 2 single crochet stitches in each of the stitches from the previous round. Alright, that wraps up round 2, but before I move on to round 3, I'm going to pull that magic ringtail one final time. And just like with the inner eye, I'm going to give it a trim, not all the way off, leave about ½ an inch on the back side of my work, and discard anything I don't use. And then I'm ready to move on to the next round. Alright, so for round 3, we're going to start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. So there are my first 3 single crochet stitches. Then I'm going to increase in the next stitch. Then repeat that 3 more times for a total of 4 repetitions of that pattern. Alright, and that's the end of round 3 for me. So for round 4, we're just going to put 1 single crochet stitch in each of the 20 stitches from round 3. Alright, that's the end of round 4 for me. And round 5, which is the last round of the outer eye, is going to start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. And then decreasing. And then we're going to repeat that sequence 3 more times for a total of 4 repetitions. Alright, and that wraps up the outer eye, so we're ready to fasten off. We're going to slip stitch to the first stitch of the round. And then we need to cut a long tail because we're going to use it to attach the inner eye to the outer eye, and then attach the eye as a whole to the body. So let's cut 12 to 14 inches or so. Like I said, I always like to have extra because running out is such a drag. So once you've got that tail cut, we're going to take that last slip stitch on our hook, pull it all the way through until the tail goes through as well, and then tighten down that slip stitch. Then we'll take the inner eye that we've already formed and we're going to slot it inside of the outer eye. And I like to kind of tug and push to make sure that the outer eye is as snug on the inner eye as possible. Once they're slotted together, we're going to take the tail that we've cut from the outer eye and thread it through the eye of our tapestry needle. And then we want to sew so that the outer eye and the inner eye stay together. So I'm going to go around the outside here, and I'm going to go through some of the layers of both the inner and outer eye. So I'm sewing into both, and then up through both layers. And I'm just going to keep sewing around attaching these two layers together so that the inner eye and the outer eye stay connected. Alright, I've gone all the way around so the inner eye and the outer eye are connected. And we need to make one more, both inner, outer eye, and sewn together before we're ready to attach them to Caleb's body. So let's make one more of these and then get them attached. Alright, so I have both the eyes complete and sewn together, and I'm ready to go ahead and get them attached to Caleb's body. So I'm going to start by threading one of the tails from the eye left over through my tapestry needle. And then I'm going to grab Caleb's body, and the eyes are going to go along the top here where that first round we made is, and it's kind of up to you how you want to position them. If you want them to be right by each other, kind of just line them up where you want them to go. You can also make them a little further apart from one another. However, I'm going to sew mine so that they are right by each other because I think that looks really cute. So I'm going to take that first eye and the tail that I've threaded through, and I'm going to make it so that the tail is kind of as far over to the right of that eye as I can. And then I'm going to sew the eye onto the body by sewing into the body and then through the outer layer of the eye, so just getting the orange here. Sew back in through the body. And then sew back through the eye. I'm just going to go back and forth sewing through just the outer layer of the eye until the eye is securely attached along the bottom. Alright, so once the eye is attached, I'm going to make sure that the tail I'm using to sew is inside of Caleb's body and not in the eye. And then just like I did when I closed off the bottom of Caleb's body, I'm going to sew a surface knot. So loop my yarn over the surface of my work, sew up through that loop itself, pull that tail so that loop ties a knot around the tail, and then weave that tail into the body, just sewing down and out. Then you can unthread your tapestry needle, and by pulling that tail tightly and snipping close to the body, we'll weave it in, and we can discard anything we didn't need. So that's one eye attached. Let's go ahead and repeat on the other side with the other eye. So I'm also going to sew my two eyes together to keep them right beside one another. So I'm going to take this tail from the second eye and sew it up through the side of the eye that I've just attached. And then I'm going to add a couple of stitches just to sew these two eyes together. I think they look cuter when they're right beside one another. So I'll just sort of attach them. Should they stay so that they're right by one another. Then I'm going to go ahead and tie a surface knot here on the eye itself. So grab a little fabric from the orange outer eye and tie a knot. Then I'll weave it into the back of the eye and out through. As long as it's not going through the white, doesn't really matter where. Unthread that tapestry needle and then pull that tail tight and snip. And that is Caleb's eyes attached to the body. Alright, so next up we need to make the big claw for Caleb the crab. So we're going to go back to using this orange colored yarn, and we're going to begin by forming a magic ring. Alright, so now that I have my magic ring formed, I'm ready to start in on round 1, where we're going to put 4 single crochet stitches inside of this magic ring. Alright, once we've got all 4 stitches in our magic ring, we can pull the tail to close the magic ring off. And then we're ready for round 2, where we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then an increase in the next stitch of the round. And then we're going to repeat that pattern one more time, so 1 single crochet stitch, and then increase, and that wraps up round 2. So for round 3, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. And then an increase in the third stitch. Then repeat that a second time, so 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches, and then an increase in the last stitch. And that wraps up round 3. So for round 4, we'll put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches. And then follow that with an increase. And then repeat that pattern one more time, so 1 single crochet in the next 3, and then an increase in the last stitch of the round. And that wraps up round 4, so we're ready for round 5, which is the last round of the big claw. We're just going to put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch. Alright, so that wraps up the big claw. We're ready to go ahead and fasten off, so we will slip stitch to the first stitch of that last round we just made. And then we'll need to cut a short tail, 4 inches or so, and then pull that last slip stitch through. And then we're not going to tighten it down a lot, just a little bit. We don't need it to be super tight because we're going to be working in this slip stitch as well. And then I'm going to take both the tail I just cut and the magic ring tail and kind of push them so they're inside of the big claw. They'll act as free stuffing, and that way they'll work in as I continue working the whole claw. I'll also add just a small pinch of stuffing on top. Alright, so let's go ahead and set the big claw aside and get started on the smaller claw. And then we're going to come back and attach the 2 of them together and finish the claw as a whole at the end. Alright, so for the small claw, we're going to be working again in this orange colored yarn. And we're going to begin, just like we did with the big claw, by forming a magic ring. And now that I have my magic ring formed, I'm going to put 4 single crochet stitches inside of the magic ring. Now that I have all 4 stitches in my magic ring, I'm going to pull the tail, which sets me up for round 2, where I'll put 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round, and then an increase in the next stitch, then repeat that a second time, so 1 single crochet, increase, that wraps up round 2. Then for round 3, which is the last round of the small claw by itself, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round, and then an increase in the next stitch, and then repeat that a second time, so 2 single crochet, and then an increase. Alright, and now that we have the small claw finished, we're going to be working both the small and the big claw together. So before we start, let's take that magic ring tail from the small claw, and I like to kind of twist it around and then use it as free stuffing here for the small claw. Then we're going to leave that stitch marker in because it's marking it's going to be the end of our round once we go around the big claw. And we're going to slip stitch the big and small claw together. And I'm going to slip stitch through the slip stitch I made to end the big claw. So I'll slip right through that slip stitch. And then I'm going to take my working yarn, pull it through both the big claw and the loop left on my hook, which attaches the two. Then we're going to work all 10 stitches around on the big claw. So we'll go to the next stitch here on our big claw and place 1 single crochet, here's my second, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, which is going to be the other side of that slip stitch. And then we left our stitch marker in on the small claw because that's going to be the first stitch we work in now, working the 8 stitches of the small claw. So go ahead and take that stitch marker out. And we're going to put our first single crochet stitch of the small claw in the stitch it was just in. So that's 1, and we'll continue working, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Alright, so we're ready for round 2 here of the claw, now that we've got the small and big claw joint. And we're just going to be putting 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. So here's my first single crochet. And I'm going to mark that one as it's the first of my round. We're just going to be putting 1 single crochet stitch in each of the 18 stitches of the big and small claw together. Alright, that is round 2 of the claw done for me. So for round 3, we'll put 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then follow that with a decrease. And then we're going to repeat that pattern another 5 times for a total of 6 repetitions all the way around the claw. Alright, so that wraps up round 3. Before I move on to round 4, I'm going to add some stuffing to the inside of the claw here. Trying to push some into both the big and small claw. And we're going to continue adding stuffing as we go, so no need to stuff super full at this point. Alright, I added a little stuffing and I'm ready to move on to round 4. We're going to do the same thing we did for round 3, but this time only 4 repetitions. So we'll start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. Followed by a decrease. And then we're going to keep repeating that 3 more times total for me. Alright, that's round 4 done. Ready for round 5, where we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. Then follow that with a decrease. And then we're going to repeat that 1 more time. So 2 single crochet, decrease. I'm going to add a little more stuffing at this point here. Alright, there's some more stuffing added to the claw. Then for round 6 and 7, we're just going to put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around to make sort of like the arms that are going to attach to Caleb's body here. So there's round 6. I'm going to add a little more stuffing. And I'm ready to make that last round, which is round 7. Alright, there is round 7 done, and that wraps up the claw, so we are ready to fasten off. We'll take our stitch marker out, and then slip stitch to the stitch it was just in. And then we need quite a long tail, because we're going to use the tail to attach the claw to Caleb's body. So I'll cut 12 inches or so, and pull that last slip stitch through. And then of course tighten that last slip stitch down. And that wraps up one of the claws, so we need to make one more and then get it attached to Caleb's body. Alright, so I have made both of Caleb's claws and I'm ready to go ahead and get them attached to Caleb's body. I'm going to go ahead and grab Caleb here. And the claws are going to get attached so that the smaller claw is facing down and the larger claw is facing up. And they're going to attach on the sides of Caleb's body. So let's start by threading that tail we left behind on one of our claws here through the eye of our tapestry needle. Alright, so now that I have that threaded through the eye of my tapestry needle, I'm going to just attach the claw so it's kind of facing up and is in line with where I attached the eyes. And I'm going to sew the claw by going through some of the fabric of the body and then sewing through both layers of the claw at the bottom. I'm just going to keep repeating that, grabbing some more fabric from the body, then going back through the fabric of the claw, and I'm going to keep repeating, sewing back and forth until I have attached the claw all the way across. So I have a claw sewn all the way across on Caleb's body, so I'm ready to go ahead and tie a surface knot. So make sure your yarn's coming out of the body itself, and we'll make a surface knot just like we have before. And sew down into the rest of the body with the tail. Unthread your tapestry needle and snip close to the fabric of your work to weave in any remaining tail from the claw that you don't need. And that is one claw attached on one side. Let's go ahead and repeat with the other claw here on the other side. Alright, those are Caleb's claws attached. So we're ready to move on in our pattern to the legs. Alright, so last up we need to make Caleb's legs. So we're going to go ahead and start again with that orange colored yarn. And we need to begin by forming a magic ring. Alright, now that I have my magic ring formed, I'm ready to start round one, which is to put 4 single crochet stitches inside of this ring. Alright, there are those 4 single crochet. I'll go ahead and pull my tail. And I'm ready to start round 2, which is to put 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And I'll mark that stitch as well. And then an increase in the second stitch. Then we're going to repeat that a second time, so 1 single crochet, increase, and then for rounds 3 through 5, we're just going to put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. So I will see you back here whenever I have finished round 5, and I'll show you how to fasten off the legs. Alright, so I have just finished that last single crochet in round 5, and I'm ready to fasten the leg off, so I'll take my stitch marker out, and I'm going to slip stitch to the stitch it was just in. And then just like all the pieces so far, we'll need a long tail to sew with. 8 inches or so should probably do it. And then we're going to go ahead and take that slip stitch, pull until our tail goes through, and then tighten down. Then I'm also going to trim the magic ring tail that's kind of hanging out of the leg at the moment. I'll trim it so it's flush with the top of the leg. Alright, so that is one of the legs complete. We need to make 5 more for a total of 6 before we're ready to attach them to the body. Alright, so I have all 6 of Caleb's legs crocheted, and I'm ready to begin attaching them to Caleb's body. So the legs are going to attach to that front loop row that we left behind, and we're going to sew 3 to one side and then 3 to the other side. And I like for the center of the 3 to be even with the claw, and then the other 2 to sort of be equally spaced between the centered leg. So let's start by sewing that first leg centered with the claw here on the right hand side. So I'm going to go ahead and thread my tapestry needle with the tail left from the leg. And then we're going to just attach it so that it sits underneath where the claw is. And I'm going to sew it so that it goes through those loops left on the back of the body from when we switched colors. And I'll just sew through each of the 6 stitches of the leg. Then I'll tie a surface knot and weave that tail in. So that is one leg attached, centered with the claw. I'll make the other leg on the other side centered with the claw as well. Alright, so there's the middle leg attached on either side. So to attach the front legs, they're going to just be equally spaced towards the front of Caleb's body here. So I'll go ahead and get that one threaded through the eye of my tapestry needle. And they're going to attach the same way. So again, kind of sit them up against where that color change was. And I've got mine about 3 stitches away from the center leg. Then we'll just sew through each of the 6 stitches at the top of the leg, going through some of the fabric of the body as well. Alright, so that's the front leg on the right side. Let's do the same thing with the other leg on the other side. Alright, so there are the 2 front legs attached, and then we're going to repeat here on the back side with the last 2 legs, the same spacing as the first 2 legs. You can also change the spacing if you want his legs to be a little closer together. You could probably wedge that third leg in between the 2 of them if you'd like, but I'm going to keep mine equally spaced. Alright, and I'll do the same thing with the last leg on the other side. Alright, and now that I have all of the legs attached, that wraps up Caleb the Crab's tutorial.